Spence and community editor and columnist at The National, Shona Craven, to go through the morning's newspapers. Guys, thanks for being with us. Good morning. Let's get straight into it.
Yes. We're going to start with... Shall we start with the Express front page? And it's not often that we get good news leading most of the papers today, leading our programme too.
It really is.
It's good news, and it's from the King, and it's an update on his cancer diagnosis.
It is, which is that he's going to be scaling back his cancer treatment from next year, which I think everybody is going to obviously take as that's a sign that it's been successful or is being successful, and that's obviously very good news, especially, I think, for somebody of his age. I think, this is often something that's slightly forgotten, is that, there's many factors, obviously, that come with cancer. Many more people these days do get diagnosed with cancer, and it can happen at all kinds of ages, and obviously, the later it is, the more difficult it is. And that's what makes it more important, of course, that it's, picked up very quickly, because actually fast intervention can have very positive impacts, massively reducing the amount of treatment, not just actually the severity of the illness. But this is the King saying that he feels blessed and that this has all come from following doctor's orders. And, it's again, going back to, of course, when he initially had that diagnosis and him using that as a platform actually to say, look, this is a wake-up call for me as much as anybody else. If you've ever been worried about it, or if you've not been, go and get checked, especially saying it to men, famously, who are very reticent about this sort of thing and actually do put things off. I think that we can say that it has had a very positive impact. Strange to say that a cancer diagnosis can ever have a positive impact, but for the nation in general, and therefore it's very nice to see that he's able to stop having quite so much treatment, take a step back, recover. I think that's all a very positive thing, as you say.
Definitely is.
Positive way to start the morning.
Really is. King Charles effect, they called it. It's a 51% increase in people going to the NHS website for checks, an increase at prostate cancer of 101%. In Cancer Research UK, 33% increase when he announced that he was being treated back in February last year.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary statistics. I found it interesting the Express highlighted sticking to doctor's orders. And you might think, well, why wouldn't you do that if you had cancer? But we do know that King Charles has some interesting beliefs in homeopathy and other alternative remedies. So sounds like he's doing what the doctors think rather than maybe some more alternative.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because in his statement he does say adherence to doctor's orders. It's quite a sort of a laboured bit towards the end. I thought, OK, you're really telling us you are listening, King.
But it also puts the human element to that, because this is breaking with royal protocol. He would have grown up not doing this. It wouldn't have been drilled into him to reveal personal details. So I think that in itself is really remarkable too.
Yeah.
So that's good news. But we're going to move on to something, well, I don't know if we call it good news or what we call it. It's the Telegraph. It's flu vaccines. The NHS is in crisis. Pharmacists are saying, Shona, that actually it's come a bit too late, the vaccines. I thought this weekend was probably the last point at which, if you go and have your flu jab, that it could cover you for the next 2 weeks of Christmas.
2 weeks to be covered.
Right.
Vicious.
Yeah, it's always a gamble, isn't it? It's always a difficult thing, because we hear often that the flu vaccine for a given year hasn't been as effective as it might because the strains mutate. And so you've got this thing where you can't prepare it too early or it won't be effective enough, but there's more time to roll it out. And I mean, the key thing here is that this was... the rollout not starting until October was following the advice from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, which, of course, we're very familiar with from the COVID pandemic. So you can hardly really disregard the advice of that committee. And if it turns out that the flu season hits earlier and it comes out of control, well, you don't have a crystal ball and you can't know. And if you tried to go too early, that could also be the wrong decision. But one thing that's mentioned is supposedly botched communications and people not knowing that they're eligible or not coming forward in time. And we do have some anecdotal evidence of people coming to pharmacists and saying, oh, I didn't know I was eligible. So that is a problem. But then, again, it's a matter of spending as well. How wide do you go with promoting something that people may be reluctant to take up? So it's hard to say, do people not come forward because they don't know that they're eligible when they maybe have been in previous years? Or are people just a bit reluctant maybe to take vaccines for all sorts of broader cultural reasons, again, following the COVID pandemic? So you can't necessarily win, and there's always going to be a sort of blame game about the timing of these things, I think.
Before you jump in, Bennett, let's do the public service bits. The flu vaccine available to everyone over 65, pregnant women, people living in a care home, those with long-term health conditions, carers, the immunosuppressed and school children. And there are other groups as well that can get it for free.
Have either of you two actually had this super flu?
No, I haven't, and I haven't.
And I'm...
Have you?
Yeah.
Not yet.
I have.
Really?
And I will say, it's particularly bad. I was out of action, effectively, for the best part of 2 weeks.
Wow.
And by day 10, I was no better than I had been at day 2. It was a really nasty bug. And you can see, you know, especially, you know, I'm perhaps not as fit and healthy as I could be, but let's be clear, I'm not somebody in my 80s or something like that. I'm nowhere near as vulnerable. You can see just why it is that this sort of thing can have such a huge, huge impact on the NHS. But as Shona says, you slightly... I think you're kind of boxing in the darks ever so slightly. If there are X, Y, Z number of strains and you have to try to anticipate which one is more likely to be...
Modelling takes place in February before it comes out in the winter.
It's an incredibly...
It's really hard.
It's really difficult. It's very complex. And I think... As much as, you know, we don't want to sort of sit back and go, that's life, I think sometimes you just have to accept, look, flu season does come every year. Sometimes one is going to get through. It's going to be particularly nasty by definition. Obviously, that's not to say, oh, well, you just sort of, you know, people are just going to have to suffer. It's why it's so important, though, that people, I think, do sort of take care of themselves, that they taking up what jabs they can very seriously. And also being sensible. You know, ultimately, if you know somebody who's older or their immune system is compromised or something, just be sensible. Just actually maybe just say, look, for your own, you know, benefit, let's maybe just not spend so much time together whilst, you know, I haven't had it yet, but I might, or I'm exposed to lots of people because I'm doing lots of work or stuff like that. I think it just requires a bit of, you know, sense, ultimately.
I think some schools have stopped singing, actually, because of the spread of the kids. I know, imagine that, good nativity.
No, but I think it's important to say if you have little ones and it's grandparents and it's spending time over Christmas. I think that's a really valid point, actually.
All right, move us on to the...
Front page of the FT, EU freezes 210 billion euros of Russian assets spent.
Yeah, this is... lots of people might be surprised to learn that there are that many Russian assets still in Europe, but this is... these are assets that are held by Euroclear, which is based in Belgium, and the EU wants to basically take this and use them as guarantees in order to secure a loan to fund the defence of Ukraine. It's not a two-way street, though, because lots of people will look at it... Well, it is a two-way street, rather. Lots of people will look at this and go, win-win, why haven't we done this before? It's very obvious why they haven't done this before, because Russia holds a lot of European assets as well, and it's going to respond in kind by seizing those as well. Russia is also talking about potentially launching legal action against
I think they already have.
Yeah, but there are other aspects to this as well, which is that there have been some suggestions that if these assets are frozen indefinitely, Russia may take other actions against European officials involved in it. And we can kind of guess what that might actually be, given that Russia runs a pretty successful grey zone war campaign against all sorts of people. It will mean actual targeting of individuals, and that may mean physical harm as well as sort of financial harm. Of course, this all comes against the backdrop of efforts to try and find a peace deal. That's not really making any kind of progress for one very simple reason, and it's buried down at the bottom of this FT story, which is that Russian forces continue to make progress across the front line. Slow, but they are winning. They have been winning for some time. Ukraine is able to hold back the tide. It would obviously be very happy to receive £210 billion worth of military aid if it were to get it in time. But it really is just the continuous salami slicing. And as long as that happens, there is absolutely no reason why Russia would be prepared to do a deal on any terms other than the ones it has proposed.
I mean, they are sort of running on two separate tracks. If Ukraine doesn't get some of this money, I think they need 60 billion to keep the economy and the military going in the first half of next year. If they don't get that, then there are real problems here. The leaders are meeting, I think, in Paris this weekend and then again in Berlin. The diplomacy continues. We've had so much shuttling around the world, haven't we, in the past couple of weeks? They're trying desperately to get to this point, and we're really coming up sort of cliff edge with this stuff. The money, and as Benedict says, the Russians moving.
I mean, it raises questions about collective action by the EU when there is so much enthusiasm for the plan from everyone apart from Belgium, where most of the assets are held and where they're the ones who would suffer this retaliatory action. And I suppose that is the part of being in a union and acting collectively, is that you think of the collective interest and you think, if Russia get this, what could happen next? Could the rest of Europe be vulnerable? But you can see it from the Belgians' perspective that they're the ones who are actually having to run that risk, and that's why they're holding out.
Yeah.
OK, can we end on this story? It's the Express, Benedict, and Dick Van Dyke's 100 years old.
It's another good news story. Well, I assume it's a good news story. I had not met anybody who dislikes Dick Van Dyke, so yeah, let's hope. But 100 years old, fit as a fiddle. Every time you see footage of him, He's always sort of waltzing and dancing. He's still
Good
going.
genes, I
and
think.
he puts it down to taking lots of vitamins, eating right, having a healthy breakfast, and he tells us what he eats for breakfast with blueberries, which is a great antioxidant.
It is.
Thank you for that. It's just one of those where you think, because actually, and we were talking about this earlier, you only ever hear bad news stories when it comes to sort of older Hollywood figures because, of course, they're older, they're getting ill, they're dying. You know, we've had cases of people like Gene Hackman earlier this year. That was very tragic. I think it's just very nice that not only is he still going, he's in good health.
He's
ultimately.
in good health, and I'll never forget the Cockney accent. Having been born in the East End of London, that Cockney accent I have to go down in history.
Would you dare try and do it on air to the nation?
Go, governor.
I think it's really good that you don't hold that against him.
He does actually say the guy they sent to coach me was Irish, so his
wow,
better than mine.
That explains a lot.
Still getting his excuses in at 100 years old. Much
my favourite Dick Van Dyke show, apart from, of course, him in Mary Poppins, is Diagnosis Murder, which kept me going through my student years this afternoon on another channel. All right, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.
For that. We'll see you again next hour. Stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?